Hello, I'm Dr. Janet Six. I'm Senior Product Manager here at Sawyer Software, and thank you for joining us at our webinar today. Today, we're going to discuss how to integrate with a graph database, a relational database, automatically extract schemas from data sources, and then create an efficient single source of truth graph model and see our first data visualizations in minutes. So first, a little bit about Tom Sawyer Perspectives, our flagship product. Perspectives is an SDK and low-code graph visualization and analysis development platform. There are extensive API libraries that allow developers to develop these applications quickly for deployment of scalable applications, and the also are used to solve many types of big data problems across a variety of industries. So just a quick introduction here with one picture is a little bit more about perspectives. So how do we do that? So first, we can federate data across an enterprise with its different databases, which may be of many types. And we bring all of that data together into a single source of truth data model. This in-memory data model is a native graph representation of the data, which we then use to effectively and efficiently do visualization and analysis of that data. So in addition, we can process the data of many types. We can do data-driven processing, or we can do user interaction to process the data as well. And the result is a set of interactive views of many different types. So let's go take a closer look. So today we're going to start here in the Perspectives Designer, which is that low-code development environment. And we are going to start from scratch. We have nothing here defined in our application just yet. So let's go and integrate with a graph database. So I am going to grab the location of my graph database here from my other screen. And I'm going to, first step is to add a module. A module means that we are working with a particular graph model. So I'm going to take the default there. And now here on the left side of the screen, you see the story of our application. First, we have the schema, which is the shape of the data that we're working with today. Since we've started from scratch, we haven't defined yet what the schema looks like, but we're going to do that along the way here today. And following down here in the story of our data, we have our integrators where we connect to our data. We're going to do that shortly. We have domains, which acts like a filter upon the graph model. The drawing templates, which we're going to use today. This will show how our nodes and edges will appear in our graph visualizations with colors and shapes, etc. Then we have graph analysis, which we will be covering in a future webinar. And then here, we're going to use our views here in a few minutes where we'll define different types of data visualization views. And then there's filters and search, which can be applied to any of those views. We have a video on our YouTube channel about search, which you can see today if you like. And then we have tags, which is a way to find things very quickly in our graph model. And our view layout, which we'll use today to create a dashboard of the different data views we're about to create. Okay, so let's get right to it. Let's integrate data. So I'm going to come over here to the integrator and I'm going to choose Add Integrator. The first thing that we're going to do is to create a connection to our TinkerPop database. So I'm going to say, okay, let's pick a TinkerPop database and we need to give the location, which I will do here. We are going to use the appropriate settings to connect to this database. So I'll pick a serializer here. I'm going to test that data source. The green check mark means that we were able to successfully connect. I'm going to do the browse for the graph because, as you may already know, graph databases can often have many different graphs within them. In our situation today with our database, we only have one graph. So I will pick that and say, okay. So now we know which database that we're connecting to and what are the settings that we should use when we talk to it. Now let's bring data in. So the first step that we need to do for that is that we need to have a place for it to go. And that means that we need to define the schema. What's the shape of the data that we're working with today? So we could define that manually if we wanted to, but the good news is that we don't have to because we can use the extract schema feature, which will go right to the database and find out what kind of data is in there and extract it for us and create the schema. So as we see here, we have just added 5 new elements to our schema. Let's go take a look. And remember, last time we looked at the schema, it was empty, but now it's populated. We can see both in the drawing view and over here in the tree view as well. So let's just zoom in here a little bit. And so we automatically went in, found the kind of data that we have, and pulled all the appropriate attributes into our schema. So that is done. All right. So now let's go back to our integrator over here. And so we have our database, we have our schema, we know what kind of data we're going to get, but we haven't brought data in yet. Let's do that. So with the graph database integrator, we can bring in the data through a graph database query. So let's do that. So I'm going to get a query and we're going to go over here to our binding section and we're going to add a query. As you see here, of course, we can work with many types of queries, but today we're going to start with this one. So I'm going to do a gremlin query here, and I do a refresh, and we see a preview of the data down here below. So what we just did in that moment, we populated our graph model. So now we have data in our system, and we can start doing data visualization and analysis. So let's go. Let's go ahead and create a graph visualization. So I'm going to come over here to views, and we're going to add a drawing view. And here you'll see those same things that we just saw in the schema, because then that tells us what is it that we have in our model. So let's go ahead and bring in, we're working with a database that has information about music. So let's bring in the artists and the songs. Those will be our nodes. And then we're going to bring in the different types of edges that we have. Okay, so I'm going to bring those in. I'm going to say, okay. All right. So we're going to come in here and we're going to add a node for each node that we have in the model. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do a structural add node. And we see here we have some defaults. We're able to just take those. This is the information that tells us which elements of the graph model do we use. So that's defined here already for us. So we're going to say, okay. All right, and we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for our other node type, which is song. So we'll come in here, do the same thing, add a node, and click OK. Now let's go in and add our edges. So we're going to do something very similar here. We're going to do add a structural add edge. And again, we can just take the defaults here. So now a question here might be, well, we have this information in the model. Why don't we just visualize everything? Well, in a production environment, graph databases are very large with millions of elements. And so creating a visualization of millions of elements is not useful. You have to narrow down a visualization to the piece that you need. So that's why we define which pieces of the model are going to go into our visualization. Okay. So we're going to finish adding just these other types of edges. And again, system helps us out here. So that's done. Okay, good. And add edge. All right. Okay, so now we have data in our model and we're ready with our first drawing view. Let's go in and take a preview. So what we're doing now is we're taking a preview of the graph application that we're building. And so you see in just minutes, we were able to connect to our graph database and create our first graph visualization. Okay, so let's go and do a little bit more with this. All right, so we just had some simple blue square boxes for our for the visualization of our node, let's do something a little bit more interesting. We're going to come over here to our drawing template, and we were just using our default node template, just a plain blue node. Let's do something that's a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to take this option to add a new node template, and we're going to call this artist template. And we're just going to use another shape. There's many different types of UIs for nodes. You can use shapes of many colors. Those colors or shapes can be determined by the data itself, or you can do something more complicated where you can build a UI on the fly given the data. Like for example, if you have a communication network and an element has gone down, you can turn it red. Or you can do something very advanced, such as having a pi node representation for each node, which might show information about the attributes of that element. Um, you also can use images as well for the nodes. Today, we're just going to use a shape. So I'm going to press OK. All right, and here we're going to define the shape and the color. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to keep the rectangle shape, and I want to add some text to the node so we can see what is this element. So I'm going to come over here, and we're going to see again that information that we saw in the schema, because what we're going to do is we're going to take one of those attributes and put that as the text in our node. So I want to show the name here. So I'll just double click that. It's added to our little expression. I'm going to press OK and OK. And then we see that the name now will show in the node. But a couple things, we're not quite ready yet to see the visualization again. So let's come over here and we're going to change the node color. So let's make this node for artists to be an orange color. So I'm going to press OK and OK. So you see how the color of the color of the node has changed, but the size of the node's not large enough to contain our full name yet. So let's go ahead and update that as well. So I'm going to say, come over here, make it fit the name. Okay, and now there's the preview of our node for artists. Okay, so let's go in and do something similar for the songs. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to add another node template. Again, we're going to use the shape, and we're going to, again, want to have text in this node. So I'm going to open this, go again to the information from the schema, and again, I'm going to say, well, I want to show the name for this song. So I'll double click that. It's over here on the right side. You can do something more complicated with expressions. You can do computed attributes given a result from analysis and so on. Today we won't do that, but that capability is there. So I'm going to press OK. We're going to change the node color. This one I'm going to just make a different kind of blue. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Okay, and then again, we want the name to fit inside the node. So I am going to make the node a little bit bigger, and there we go. Okay, so now we've defined how artists and song nodes should look. Oh, let's see. Oh, I see that I didn't name this. Let me call it song template. Okay, good. All right, so now let's go use that in our drawing. So when we come over here to our definition, we can say which template to use. So let's start with artist, and we can come over here and say use that new template that we just defined. Okay, and okay. And we're going to do something similar for the song as well. You can do something similar with the way the edges appear, but we will not cover that today. All right, so let's do a preview. And so now we have those new colors. We have the darker blue, and then we have the orange for the other type of element as well. So there we go. All right, so we've updated our data. Okay, so while we're here, let's take a look at the different layout styles we have very quickly. So this is orthogonal layout. We also have bundle layout. This is the same graph, but we're able to intelligently group edges together. We have circular layout, which will naturally show the clusters that are inherent in graphs. We have hierarchical, which will show flows and dependencies in the system. And then we have symmetric, which will show you a different or more traditional type of graph visualization. Okay, all right, so let's do one more thing here. So you saw that we grabbed about 75 elements from our graph database. Let's say that we want to get more. Let's go back to our integrator definition, and over here where we define the query, we're going to bring in more data by changing one thing. We're going to change the 75 to 200. Do a little refresh. And right now we have brought more data into our model. So let's take a look at our preview. So by changing that one number in the definition, we were able to get a much larger graph visualization. All right, now let's go do more. Let's add some more data views. Okay, so we have a drawing view. Let's go in and add an inspector view. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say add view. We're going to add an inspector this time. Oops, an inspector this time. The inspector is going to show us those details of the element. So we want to do this for all types of elements. Press OK. And then we want to include the attributes dynamically. And what that means is whether we select a node or an edge, it's going to show exactly the attributes that we have for that type of element. All of that is done for us automatically. So I'm going to press OK. All right, that's it. We've defined our inspector. All right, let's go in and add a table view. All right, and so we're going to have a table view, and we're going to bring it in for, let's see, just those two types of nodes that we have here. So I'm going to press OK. And again, you're going to see that information that we had defined in our schema. What type of attributes do you want to work with in our table? So I want to show all of them. So I'll just click those. Our table defined. All right, now let's go in and add a tree view. So I'll press OK. Again, we're going to bring in just these nodes this time. So I'm going to say OK. And here we're going to define, okay, you want these in your tree. What is it that you want to show in the tree? So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say add a tree node. This tells us where to place it. And then here, what we're asking is, what is the text that you want to show in your tree? So in this case, we want to show the name. So I'll say, okay. Everything is ready to go. So we'll click that. And then we're going to do the same thing for the song. And again, we want to show the name. Okay. All right. Tree defined. Okay. So we now have 4 visualizations for our graph database. We have our drawing view, we have our inspector view, the table view, and the tree view. Now let's turn that into a dashboard. So we're going to come over here to the view layout, and we're going to arrange our views. So I'm going to press the plus sign, and I'm going to do the drawing view. Now let's place our table. So I want to place the table down below. So I'm going to add a split panel, and I'm going to add our table view here. Okay, that's a lot of space for the table view, so I want to drag that down a little bit. Okay, now we have 2 more views. We have our tree view and our inspector view. Let's put those over here. So I'm going to do a horizontal split panel. I want the drawing view over here on the right side, and then I want the table view over here. Pardon the tree view and the inspector over here. So I'm going to add our tree view that we just defined, and then I want to put the inspector just right below that. So I'm going to add a split panel, and we're going to add the inspector view. So those four views that we just defined, we now have in our dashboard layout. But I think we can do a little bit here with the amount of space that we're taking for the tree view and the inspector view. Let's make that take up less space. So I'll just drag that over here. Okay, so we have our tree view, our inspector view, we might not need so much space, and then we have our drawing view and our table view. Let's go take a look. And there are all our views. Let's go in and take a look. In fact, we can add a little overview window and we can zoom in to part of our visualization. Okay, so we can select, and you see how we have highlighted in our tree over here and also our table, and that is showing how our views are synchronized. So if you select in one view, you're automatically going to select in another. And then our inspector view over here is going to show us details for that element. So we can navigate through the drawing by pressing through the other views. Like for example, let's pick something here in the table, and it'll zoom us right into that area also in the drawing view. Okay. So again, we started with nothing. We connected to our graph database. We added four data visualization views. We created a dashboard arrangement of views. And here we're looking at the preview. So what we can do from here is that we can generate the web application code that's needed to deploy this to a server. And those files and with scripts and readmes are created automatically, and those are used to speed deployment of this application to the end environment that you need. All right, so let's do one more thing with this application today, and that is to integrate with another data source. So let me bring back up the designer. And we're now going to connect to a SQL data source and bring in more information that is useful for us. So I'm grabbing the name of my SQL database from my other screen here. All right, and we're going to come over here to the integrator section, and we are going to add another integrator because we can talk to many integrators at the same time in a single application and bring everything together into one model. Okay, so we're going to add an integrator, this time for SQL, and we can use many types of SQL drivers, and today we're going to use one of these SQL servers. So I'll press that option. And I'm going to show the location of the database. Oops, got the wrong thing. Let me grab again. Okay, and let's log in. Let me grab my password from over here. All right, now we're going to test the data source. Okay, now it's going to tell me, oh, you have this driver. We need to add this to your application so we know how to communicate with the database. So I'm going to say, okay. And I'm going to add that driver, which I previously downloaded in order to talk to this database. I'm going to add that. And here's the name of that driver. I'm going to choose. Okay. Just got to reopen the file so we have that driver loaded. Okay, so now reopened for us. Okay, so we'll come back over here to the definition where we were. We're going to test that data source. Green check mark means that we have opened the data source successfully. Okay, so now we need to update our schema and our graph model because we're going to bring in more data. So how do we do that? We could do it manually, but we don't have to because we can extract the schema. So let's do that. We're going to extract the schema. And this database is pretty large. We don't need to have all the information on it. So we're going to focus in on the sales information from this data source. We'll press next. We've extracted we're extracting the data. It's asking us, do you want to bring everything into the schema? We could, but we don't need to. We're very focused on the types of sales information that we need today. So I'm going to deselect everything. I'm going to select sales order header. I'll press next. It's extracting the schema. It'll say, do you want us to bring in dependencies? Let's say no. And then it'll say, okay, these are all of the attributes that I have for what you wanted me to bring in. And so it'll say, do you want us to bring in all the attributes for all the elements we bring in? And the answer here is no. This is quite a few. So we're going to deselect. We don't need to see these today in our application. So I will deselect and I'll say, bring me these with the green check mark. And I'm going to say, finish. Okay, and so it tells me it extracted the schema, it's added a new model element. Okay, good. All right, so let's go take a peek at the schema. All right, and you can see there's our new attribute, the one that we just added over here. So you can see the details here, or you can see them over here in our drawing view. And it just did all of that automatically for us. Okay, so now we have the schema. Let's go back over here to the definition. We're going to check out the bindings. So we're going to come over here to our sales order header. And now we're looking at the data from the SQL database. I'm going to press sales header. And here again are all of those elements that we wanted to bring in. So remember those attributes that we picked? Here they are. And so these blue columns showed us which data is going into which element. So all of that was taken care of for us automatically by using the schema extraction feature. Okay, so now we have both TinkerPop data and SQL data in our in-memory graph model. Let's add a visualization of this new SQL data to our application. So we're going to create a new table. I'm going to come over here to views. I'm going to choose table. And that's going to ask me, which data do you want to use? So this use of domains is becoming more important now as our application is growing. We don't want to bring in songs and artists again. We've already done that. We just want to talk about this new sales data. So I'm going to choose just that domain, which again is a filter on the model itself. So I'm going to press that, say OK, and it's going to ask me, which things do you want to put into the table? Which attributes do you want to show? So in this case, I want to show all of them. So I'm just going to press this at the top, and I'm going to say, OK, our table view is defined. All right, but now let's add it to our dashboard. So I'm going to come back here to our view layout, and we're going to add a table here at the bottom. So I'm going to do a horizontal split panel. I want to keep the graph information here on. Oh, let's see. Let's try that again. Do a horizontal split panel. I want to keep the graph database table on the right side. And over here, I'm going to add our new SQL table. Okay, that had quite a few attributes. So let's go ahead and make that table a little bit larger. So we'll do something like this. So this SQL data will have more space to be. Now let's go and do a preview. All right, so now we are simultaneously looking at the TinkerPop data and the SQL data. So let's zoom in here a little bit more. And we can select, and again, you're going to see the selection here in the table, also over here in the tree, and we'll see information that we need in the inspector. It brings up the information given the particular data value. And then over here, we now have that sales information. So we're able to bring it in all in one place to see all the kind of information. And when I click in here on the table, so you see that the inspector is updated as well, showing all of the attributes that we have. So today we started with nothing, and we added in a TinkerPop integration and an SQL integration into a single source of truth data model, and then we created an application to use those different data sources together. And so we are running near the end of the time for our webinar, but I did want to add in that we do connect to many different kinds of data sources. So these are some of the data sources that we connect to. So you'll see the major graph databases, you'll see traditional SQL as well, and you'll see other formats, including XML. We also support RDF, and even things as Excel files and structured text as well. And for more information on connecting with a SQL graph database, we do have a video that goes into more detail on how to connect to a SQL database and create applications on that. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to go to the YouTube channel. I think somebody's going to be posting the link for this video in our chat today. And you can see more information about bringing in SQL and extracting graph data structures as well from that. So at this point, I just wanted to thank you very much for joining us today. We looked at just some of the capabilities that are available in the Perspectives Graph platform. Please contact us today at tomsawyer.com to start a free trial of Perspectives or to schedule a call for a demo. We're very happy to work with you and guide you in how to best bring graph technology to your use cases.